Ladies and gentlemen, are we live? Perfect. If you came for peace and quiet, you're in the wrong place. This is the Culture Warriors podcast, where we unpack the world's problems armed only with microphones, sarcasm, and poor life choices. I will be tonight's host. My name is David Webster, and with me are my co hosts and our guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself, guys.
Yo, what's going on? Drew Outstanding here, combat veteran, retired, now consultant and veteran advocate. So I help out people all across the country, the world. Be pretty awesome consulting on that and talking about culture and politics.
My name's AK Kamara. I am the third leg of this stool to give us some stability. I'm actually the establishment shill. I'm the Republican National Committee man for the state of Minnesota, so I'm actually technically a Republican Party official national. But I'm just a dude. I like to make content online, and I hope to be able to provide at least a glimpse of what the future can be, that you don't have to think of like the Republican Party being like this stodgy old thing of a bunch of like corporate suit, wearing folks that don't know what's actually going on in the real world. So that's me, AK Kamara.
All right, and then over here in the corner, we have our guest. Isaac, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm the president of Turning Point USA at Minnesota State Mankato. We started up in August, and we just have the mission of, having good dialogue with conservatives, with liberals, with really anybody that wants to have the dialogue. Had a couple of events. We're still going strong, and we're hoping to take that into this spring, carry on the mission of Turning Point. So, yeah, glad to be on the show.
Awesome, incredible. Well, we're gonna jump right into some topics because we know that you've got limited time, and while we're doing that, we'll kind of keep an eye on the time and we'll cut it short a little bit so we can give you a chance to plug the things that you got going on down there in Mankato because we want to make sure to support what you guys have going on. So, jumping in, first topic we're gonna jump into is the Derek Chauvin appeal. AK, you brought this to our attention. Why don't you take lead on this and kind of introduce the topic, and we'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. But before that, make sure that you guys hit the like button. Um, During the show, during the podcast, we want to be able to have conversations with people that are watching. So make sure to drop your comments or questions in the chat on whatever platform that you are watching this on. And then also make sure to share the link to the actual show. That's the only way that we're ever going to be able to grow this. And you can find us at either Culture Warriors Unchained, CW Unchained, on basically most of the platforms out there. But yeah, to get things started, the first conversation, which is I think huge for the state of Minnesota, that actually has national, and I would even argue sometimes international ramifications, is the George Floyd hoax. And the reason that I call it a hoax, it's not that George Floyd didn't die, because clearly he did die, but all of the framing around what actually occurred on that day in regards to the Minneapolis police officers that arrested and subdued George Floyd. And during that arrest and subdual, he ended up dying. The entire narrative around that actually sparked what we saw as the Black Lives Matter Summer of Love riots that occurred, and changed, I think, the way that police are viewed in a negative light all across this country, which to this day has had negative ramifications. One of the stats that I like to talk about is you can just do some modeling and say, before George Floyd died and the way that police were viewed by the general public, and then saying, based off of that, what were the types of, the number of people that were killed, homicides within black communities, and you look at what that number was, the trend, the average, and then you look from that point forward with now this new negative light of what law enforcement is, and that they're systemically racist and all of these things, and to see the spike in crime that occurred and see how many black people have died after George Floyd, it is like 100% unequivocal. It has been worse for black communities since George Floyd died. And so I'm not saying that the death of George Floyd was what, produced this result of more black people dying. I'm saying that the narrative that Derek Chauvin, a racist white cop, murdered George Floyd on basically video camera for the whole world to see, that narrative is a hoax. That is not at all what happened. So in regards to that, because Derek Chauvin was, along with the other officers, Tua Tao, Alexander King, Thomas Lane, they were all hung out to dry for political purposes so they could satisfy the bloodthirsty mob. And so to that end, Derek Chauvin is the last former Minneapolis police officer that's still in prison. And his lawyer recently filed a petition to have his case reviewed. And here's the key. Because it's a hoax, and we can break down, we can have this conversation of these different keys and these different parts. One of the biggest issues is that everyone says that Derek Chauvin used an illegal or banned move or hold on George Floyd, and therefore that's what killed him, is his knee on his neck. That's not true. So that's like one of the biggest hoaxes. The move that was used, the hold that was used, is known as the maximal restraint technique, the MRT. It was an improvised MRT. But basically they followed protocol to a T. And on the basis of that, during that trial, if you remember, the Minneapolis chief of police came out and said, that is not a hold that I've seen, that we have taught, it's an illegal hold. And then you also had another officer who is now the deputy chief of police by the name of Katie Blackwell. And she also said, I've never seen this before. But in this petition by Derek Chauvin's lawyer, there are 50 current and former Minneapolis police that are signing an affidavit saying this was a technique that was taught by the Minneapolis police. So therefore, Derek Chauvin was following protocol, following his training, and did everything by the book. And it's unfortunate that George Floyd died, but that's ultimately what kind of the crux is. So I'm curious, kind of go around the horn. Anyone can jump in, doesn't have to be in order. One, what do you think about the way that I just laid things out in regards to Derek Chauvin and the George Floyd hoax? And two, like, what do you think the likelihood is that this will actually end up going through? I'm just kind of curious. Anyone jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, even any objectively normal person could see, with the amount of footage that came out post the trial, that he was clearly having a really bad reaction to a lot of different narcotics that also contributed to what happened to him, along with his, pre-existing health conditions. And so I do think that this is a good thing that we're reopening. Do I think that he'll get a fair shot? Unfortunately, in this state, with the current leaderships that are in place, I don't necessarily see that happening. There had even been some things that had come out with the medical examiner saying that he felt pressured by certain offices to change the cause of death to the choking versus other medical crises that were happening in response to the amount of drugs in his body. Drew, what's your
I watched this from the start. I was watching the news, listening, the commentary, everything as this was leading up. This is in Minnesota, where I live, where all four of us do, and it was wild. I saw the lead up to everything like this. It looked like it was they called it a civil unrest, and it was a lot more than that. Or what led after with the riots and death and things like that. But yeah, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. It kind of paid to pay attention to news during this time in 2020. This was when COVID was what they said it was and everything like that. But yeah, it was wild. I was in the National Guard at the time. And National Guard says, oh, yeah, we're just going to, have the civil unrest patrol and a few other people, and it'll be all right. But if anybody wants to volunteer to get activated, you can do so. And I'm like, yep, I'll do it. I know what's coming. And then, of course, a couple days later, they start activating, 1,000 Minnesota National Guard soldiers. And then a day later, it was like the whole thing pretty much. But yeah, I saw the writing on the wall. The riots were going to come just because the way the media set up the narrative, the video, and I'm like, there's more to it than that. And of course, I'm like, there's we're only going off somebody's iPhone, doing this. They weren't going off the body cams, and then those came later on. And I don't think many people saw the whole thing of him asking to be put on the ground, let out of into the car, out of the car, all that stuff. I watched everything I could. So the trial, it didn't cover everything. I watched a lot of the trial. Many of the YouTube commentators were breaking it down, and they're like, "This is wild." They're not the jury. Everybody was not taking in all the information, and So I think he should get all the appeals, break it down, do the best you can, fight for all this stuff. Maybe it could change, but yeah, he's got to have attorneys that kind of go for everything.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Yeah,
curious,
absolutely.
Isaac, from your perspective, right? Like, you're a youngin. How old were you even when George Floyd happened? Is it something
So
that you
the
remember?
one thing
Yeah.
I was going to mention about this actually is it's really interesting because I remember it was shortly after George Floyd died that I was in high school. I think I was a freshman, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I believe it was that it's the second semester of my freshman year of high school, and they had this ceremony. It was like 9.5 minutes of silence that we went out to our football stadium and we had this ceremony, 9.5 minutes of silence or whatever to recognize how long Derek Chauvin had knelt on George Floyd's neck. And I was thinking at this point, I was like, I went to it because I really, it's just like, it's insane that we're recognizing this. But I've thought about this for years. I really just wish the topic would be brought up again, and he would be brought back to trial. And I mean, I'm not saying that it would. I just want something that's a net good here, so we can restore a lot of people's faith in police if they lost it somehow there. And of course, I don't want more civil unrest in our country, especially like we saw in 2020 and the years following there. But yeah, it was an interesting time to be alive. It was an interesting time to be a high school student, is what I'll say. And I think the topic needs to be brought up again. I agree with you guys on that completely.
So Isaac, I've had this thought. I think that, you know, just with the state that we're in currently and with the leaderships that are in place, I don't think he's going to get a fair shot. Anything short of like the president stepping in and giving him a pardon. What do you think about that? Do you think that's the move that should happen here? A more of a national, like we're backing the blue, or what do you think the best course, like to get him potentially out
Yeah,
of these charges, would be?
I kind of agree with that sentiment. Actually, I think that the best shot we probably have would be President Trump stepping up and saying that we need to pardon this man. And I really do agree. I think it would restore some faith in the Back the Blue movement. I mean, yeah, of course I back the blue completely, and I think that if it comes to that, it comes to that. But I would support the president in doing that. I think that we need to have justice here in this case. So yeah, there might be another issue if you have a unfair trial and it just goes in that direction, and you might have to have the president step in. But I would support that if that were what it came to be honest.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is important to point out too, so there is some nuance here. So, like full disclosure, I've actually had multiple conversations with Derek Chauvin's mother and also with his aunt. Both of them reached out to me because I've been so vocal about wanting people to challenge the narratives that they believe in regards to George Floyd and Derek Chauvin and the entire incident in and of itself. So one of the things is that a federal pardon does nothing with the state charges that that Derek Chauvin was convicted of, because of the way that the trial ended up going out. So that's why this petition is very important, because getting a new trial, I think, given the distance and daylight and not having pressure coming from the Department of Justice, because that was one of the things that was very clear, that the Department of Justice, 100%, and I know it was during President Trump's first term, but he didn't have a hold on the Department of Justice like the way that he has now. And what I mean by hold is that people that are actually in serving the interests of actual justice, not this pretend version of justice that actually existed and has existed, I think, in a long time in this country. And so with all that said, we need a new trial, because I think without having that pressure from the Department of Justice, without having the framing that this was a racist incident, which it 100% was not. And for anyone that's more interested, just for the sake of time, because I could talk about this for hours, go to my X page. Real AK Kamara is my X account, and I have it as my pinned post breaking down the 5 George Floyd hoax myths. And I did it actually on the 5-year anniversary of that incident in and of itself. But ultimately, I think you're right, Isaac. We need to see justice served, and the entire narrative being deconstructed that these racist police officers killed a black man, a modern day public lynching. that is a false narrative, and it has done so much damage to the institution of policing in this country that has to be undone. And so I know that there's people out there like Jack Posobiec that have really been pounding this. Obviously, Liz Collin, Alpha News, they've been at the forefront of this. And so I just encourage people to be like, hey, let's make sure to continue to share these narratives. I mean, to this day, I don't think that Elon Musk has shared the Fall of Minneapolis documentary, which is a heck of a red pill for a lot of folks. Even to this day, I'll have conversation with Republicans that have never seen the documentary. They do not know that the entire narrative that was sold was a false narrative, and it really kind of makes them mad. But that's kind of that for that topic. I would like to move on to something else, Isaac, just because I know that your time is short with us, and I'm very curious what your perspective is on, basically the revelations that were made this week here, actually, the end of last week, that there is so much fraud happening in Minnesota, which we knew about, but that through analysis, that there's literally Minnesota taxpayer dollars that is going to fund the Al-Shabaab terrorist organization and network that's connected with Al-Qaeda in Somalia and in Eastern Africa. And that's kind of what the big news story was. Chris Rufo with City Journal, along with another journalist, kind of did a bunch of digging, and they released this story. I'm just curious from your perspective, and then the rest of the panel, do you think this really changes the way that people are looking at it? Obviously, it looks like the president made an executive order to rescind the temporary protected status for Somali refugees that came to this country underneath that specific immigration protection. But I'm just curious from your perspective, is this a big deal? Is it shocking to you? Are you enraged? What are you hearing even from other people your age in the college sphere?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. That's the main thing with this. So, I'm a big fan of legal immigration pathways, and all those types of things. And I mean, yeah, I've gone to Minneapolis. There's a large Somali community there, and I don't immediately have an issue with it. But one thing that their community is inclined to do more, and I've heard this from a lot of people, is when they come here through immigration pathways, a lot of what they do is, we know that they're sending money back to their home country to support their families there. And again, naturally, I don't have an issue with that. But then it's just, I wonder how much we've opened a portal into more potential issues with that. Because there is the issue of the temporary protected workers. And I think that the executive order was a great move by the president to rescind, because it's come to a point where I think that Charlie Kirk, I know I'm going to mention him, of course, because he was a big supporter of the idea that we need legal immigration pathways, and we need people to assimilate to our American culture. And I think that if we want to take away temporary protected status, it's probably a good thing when we think about who our allegiance is to. I mean, my allegiance is to the US of A, or the USA. And sometimes when we have foreigners in our country, I want their allegiance to be to the USA, and I want their allegiance to be to this country. I want them to be patriots. And many of those people are. But yeah, it just comes down to the issue of who's here, who's documented, who's not documented. And I think we need to have a serious conversation about, I would even recommend President Trump bringing Tim Walz to the White House and having a conversation about it. That's what I think needs to happen, is we need to put this on more of a national stage, really, and bring light to the issue. So it's still unfolding. I haven't read all the headlines about it, but yeah, it's certainly gotten some talk because, I'm in Mankato, and we have a lot of, we have good political dialogue here. So yeah, that'd be my take.
Yeah, Isaac, I like your point on having Trump bring in Walz, because I mean, there's a couple of things there. He just had I'm going to say that name wrong, Mondavi, in there. Yeah,
Dami.
Mom Dami. Okay.
Yeah.
No, and I thought that was a good move, and because he
needs his mom after that visit to the White House.
He owned the stage. He's like, all right, we'll take some questions, and it looked good. Trump came out looking good, because he'd be like, hey, you can't throw anything out against me. I'm making peace. he's elected. He was the mayor of New York City. Now let's figure out how to work together and not against each other and against America or whatever the case is. So yeah, and the second point is it's funny because Walz was the vice president candidate for Kamala. So it's like, yeah, send old Timmy into the White House and let's see kind of how that conversation goes. I like that how you put that, Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac,
Yeah,
I was going to
absolutely.
ask
Both
too,
great.
like, I know that it's a relatively newer story, but I'm just going to kind of give the quick and dirty of it. Minnesota has been giving out tune of billions of dollars in government assistance. Through COVID, there was a program called Feeding Our Future. Turned out that about $250 million of that program was spent fraudulently. So far, there have been 77 people that have been indicted, and of those, I think like 60 have been convicted, whether through a trial or they pleaded out as guilty. But after pulling through those threads, they found that there was a bunch of other programs that were being abused. And so basically, this analysis was looking at how much money was being remitted to Somalia that then was going to Al Shabaab, and that of those people that were making those remittances, they found that there was millions upon millions of dollars that came from people that had been indicted for committing fraud using these government assistance programs. So that's kind of like the overview. And so I'm curious from like your perspective, and it's okay if the answer is no. Have you heard from other, college age students any type of like, man, this is really messed up that people that are here on the good graces of the United States, or maybe they're first generation Americans, would abuse our benevolence as taxpayers and abuse these systems and then send the money that goes and lands in terrorist hands? I'm just curious if there's any type of, I guess, conversations you've heard from the fraud, if that's something that affects college age students,
I mean, I certainly think it affects us. Yeah. The if I know you mentioned it, the headline is sort of new with that. That all the news is coming out is sort of a newer thing, especially since it was brought up in the past week. But there's definitely the idea here that the answer to that question might be I haven't really heard a lot of discussion about that yet in our circles here. But I will say there's certainly a lot of question about just how much our welfare is corrupt. Our welfare systems, all those pathways, those channels, they're in a lot of senses they can end up being corrupt. And this is another one of those cases where I really hope that we keep Minnesota in the spotlight with this, because it determines a lot for our future, who's elected in the state, who represents us, and I think it needs to stay. It needs to stay in the spotlight because we think about how corrupt that is and who's really behind it. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of corrupt people that run our state, in my opinion. But yeah, I would say haven't heard a lot of people's thoughts about it. We're going to have a meeting here in a few minutes that I'll need to head to, and we'll be talking
Yeah, let
about
me
it
let me
there.
give
We're
a
talking
final
about
question
immigration,
then,
so.
Isaac. Tell me, like, do you feel hopeful, like, from what you're seeing on campus? I went to Minnesota State as well, 15 years ago, and yeah, can you tell me just what you see politically and like optimistically from your perspective on the ground in Mankato?
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential here. We are getting more engagement over time. It's really been a good. It's been great how we've been building that. There have been people that have reached out to me individually, reached out to Bell, Jacob. I know you had them on the show. It's been really promising. I think that the thing that I want to foster here most is just debate. That's always my big thing. I love having controversial conversations. I don't like getting on people's bad side, but we need to have the conversations. That's the main thing. And a lot of what we do is we do tabling in our student union, which is just over here, and it goes very well. We have good conversations with some more liberal-leaning people that will come and talk to us. We have people that are really curious. They want to say, "Oh, I didn't know you had this here." So it's been really promising for me. I'd love to see where it goes, and if it gets more controversial, I'm fine with that. I'm looking for the debate, and that's always something that excites me. So.
Absolutely awesome. Well, Isaac, I know you got to get going, but before we let you go, we just want to give you a couple of minutes. Do you want to plug anything? So some socials for your Turning Point chapter down there, anywhere that people can find you and support your local chapter and what you guys have going on and maybe some events that you have coming up, some speaker events or something that you want to let us know about.
Yeah. So we have an event coming up in a week. It's in Morris Hall at Minnesota State Mankato. That's going to be an event with Jeremy Munson. If any of you know him, he's going to tell us a little bit how to engage with politics. It's should be a good event. It's open to all students, the community. Our socials, right now, the main ones that we have are on Facebook. You can find us at TPUSA Mankato, and our Instagram is TPUSA_MSU Mankato. So I probably don't know if I can necessarily plug them in right there, but that is that, and we hope that we get some engagement with that. So I thank you again for having me on the show. So it's really been
Thanks
an
for coming
honor.
on. You're welcome to come back.
Yeah, and I just
Thank
want
you
to
very
say,
much.
keep up the fight, brother. I know that it's not an easy place to have these conversations and have these dialogues, but it's important to be able to have them. And would love for you to be able to come on at a future show so you can participate for the entire episode. I'm just always so curious because I think it's important to connect the things that all three of us are thinking with the future, which is you and your generation and your fellow students and your friends, because you're going to be the ones that eventually are going to be working to make sure that our system stays intact. And there are some red flags that maybe we've done a very, very bad job at, trying to set up a good future for your generation. So appreciate your time. You guys have a great meeting. Say hi to everyone else from all of us here at Culture Warriors Unchained, man.
Will do. Well, thank you again. It's good to be on with y'all. So hope you have a good rest of your podcast.
Thank
See ya.
you.
Thanks, Isaac. God bless.
So yeah, I kind of, here's what I'm curious about, right? So obviously, from this story, this is the way that I see it. And if you guys disagree and have a different analysis, is after the story breaks, this is something that those of us that live in Minnesota, have known about for a long time. I've made so many videos talking about the fraud that's been occurring in the state over and over again. But this was the first time that I think we've got some really big national attention since the Feeding Our Future fraud first broke, like back in 2022. And so when this story blew up and libs of TikTok and like Elon Musk and everyone was kind of retweeting the story that Chris Rufo did, it finally got some national prominence. And then President Trump, like with a quickness, man, came in and said, hey, we're ending temporary protected status for Somalians. And I guess here's what I'm curious about. Do you think that that story is what spurred President Trump to make that action? And then, if you do or whatever, I'm also curious, and we can kind of dig into the weeds a little bit, what ending that temporary protected status functionally does versus what maybe the hope is. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, do you guys think that that's kind of the way that this happened? Are you happy to see that, there's some action?
Okay, no
being
more
made?
questions. I'm gonna forget all the first questions.
All right.
Like, okay,
One at a time, AK.
yeah.
You're not
I know,
as young
man,
as
I know, I
Isaac.
know.
I got limited memory, man.
Yeah,
Short
brother.
term. I know it's all good. Yeah, the articles or what that led up to it, absolutely. It's a cascading effect. I mean, it takes all of us. It really does do that. Like, it feels like, we're all talking about something and we're not getting heard, but something catches on, whether it trends or a video that you do gets connected to somebody else. And then before you know it, the president makes an action. I think that's the way politics are going right now. That's the way media, independent media, I mean, anywhere from our little tiny podcast right here to other ones, it gets the gears pumping. So don't be afraid. Speak up, speak out, bring up topics that you're concerned about, and it does make a difference. It moves that machine for sure. And yeah, I make videos and I ask questions, and I'm like, how does this relate to the for one, how does this impact me, or what did I do to lead up to something like this? And I always get drawn back to taxes. Be like, okay, where are my taxes going to? Are they going to this, whatever group or people? And then where's the money going from there? And it's just like this, follow the money, this big cycle. So yeah, I think it does pay off to talk about this stuff. And then, yeah, it grabs attention of high up people.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in the last couple of days, I mean, I saw Glenn Beck did a bit on his show about it. I think Benny Johnson had even covered it. So, what's that? Can you hear
Just
me?
get
up.
closer to your microphone, bro.
Got it. All right. So I was saying Glenn Beck was covering this. I saw it on his channel a while, like within the last 24 hours. I know that Benny Johnson had jumped on the story. So I just think that, yeah, like you guys are saying, and like Drew was even saying, like when even a small person with maybe a small following, when you can put stuff online and let people know, hey, this is what's really going on, um, and it gets enough traction that the larger, podcasts, the larger shows, the larger influencers, the independent medias are going to grab it, and then that's how stuff like this gets in front of somebody like President Trump, where he can then address the problem. As for whether or not I'm happy with this outcome, I know this is a sensitive topic for just people, even in some of the circles that I'm in. I don't necessarily care what country you're from. If you're stealing from us, or if you're actively funding our enemies and hurting our interests abroad and at home, you don't deserve to be here. Just through my immigrant story, everything that I have is because I'm in this country. So I operate out of this like sense of gratitude for everything that I have. And so it's really weird when you see certain people come like Mumdani, or even like Ilhan Omar coming in here and talking about how racist and terrible this country is, or how we're these horrible people. And it's like, we rescued you from a war torn country where you had nothing, and now you have a roof over your head, you have meals, you have all these things provided for you on our dime. The least you can do is not turn around and then fund our enemies. So
And
I
then our taxes just keep going up. Progressive
Yes,
tax system,
exactly.
one of
And
the
so
most
it does
progressive.
twofolds. It hurts us here at home. It makes things more expensive. And I just recently was watching another channel that I follow pretty closely, talking about SNAPs being used to buy fast food. So we're also subsidizing the big fast food industry with the SNAP money that we're all paying taxes into. And it's just, at some point someone's got to stop stealing from us. And if this is the starting point, I'm okay with it. I
Yeah,
don't
it
care
So
if
really
they're
gets me. I try
Peruvian
to
or
do the
Somalian.
the shoe on the other foot. Like if I went to Canada or France or Australia and said, "Hey, all right, give me your taxes, and then I'm gonna send it. Oh, I'm gonna blame you. Say you got a horrible country, and then I'm gonna send that money back over to my people somewhere else." Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like especially when it's like destroying that country. Like America just isn't like a free for all. To like, I always get reminded of The Simpsons, and they're referencing Scarface. Homer gets the truck with all the sugar, crashes on the road, and Homer wants all the sugar to himself. And then, he says, you got to protect it, otherwise they're going to come after it. It's just wild to me that people are just going to, oh, America has all this freedom and all this money or resources or whatever. It's like now the whole world come after it however you can, either walking over the border or, different ways, and then taking that resources or that money or the taxes and
Filing
then
all that false
sending it back.
marriage paperwork.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then putting it out there and be like, "Oh, we hate you, America, but thanks for all your stuff, and now peace out." Like it just doesn't make sense to me.
yeah, one of the things that's fascinating, right, is that as part of the story, I agree with both of what you guys said. But here's the thing, right? From a functional standpoint, the thing that President Trump loves to do because he understands how people work, and that's probably President Trump's greatest skill, is he understands people very, very well. Is that by throwing out a very, very simple red meat piece, which is we're going to end temporary protected status for Somali immigrants. One, we've had temporary protected status for the Somali people since 1993. Now, I understand that they still have active conflict that goes on, but I mean, listen, if in the course of almost 25 years you haven't been able to really get a good grasp on whatever, and my math is bad because 1993 to now is what? That's actually is
30.
that 32 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's right around
32
30.
years.
Yeah.
30
30.
years, right? And you haven't been able to figure out like, okay, we need to get these people out here or whatever. And again, I understand that, there still are active zones of conflict or whatever, but I just think that people were abusing it. Now, from a actual what does it do standpoint, this is important. There's only an estimated 500 people that are in the state of Minnesota that would be affected by ending the temporary protected status for Somalis. So like literally 500. Now the total estimated population of Somali-born people that are in Minnesota is somewhere between 90 and 120,000. Like it varies. And then people also got to remember that once you come here, and if you were here under a different status, not temporary protected status, but you were here as part of the refugee resettlement program, or one of those other, again, immigration statuses, and then you have a child, that child is an American citizen. So ultimately, right, you can kind of view ultimately that when you're looking at what does this functionally do, it doesn't do a whole lot, but it makes the conversation say, okay, when people within communities that we welcome with arms wide open are abusing the system, do we then take the status, take the position that we're going to end certain statuses for those groups? And I think that having that conversation is an important conversation to have. Things can get very, very sensitive. I would never sit here and tell you that if you are of Somali ancestry or descent, that makes you any more likely to do X, Y, or Z. Because if you open up that door and you open up Pandora's box and you start to say that your genetic lineage will open you up to the likelihood of committing fraud, I don't want to end part of that conversation because I'm a mixed race person. Okay, I think
Well, the
that's
key is
absurd.
assimilation. So
Yes.
coming to the country or being raised by people that came to the country, what values are you, combining? Be like, what are your best strengths from where you came from and what your family's about, combined with America's opportunity and our Constitution, our values, everything like that, and then making your community better, not taking away from what's currently kind of going on. I do like the idea of, because like, and then when does it end? Because like there are conflicts all over the country or all over the world, different countries, and they're not official wars or anything like that, but there's dictators and and tyrants and all this stuff, and funded by different people all over the place, and it happens constantly. We only get highlights of the ones that we have some kind of influence on, or or whatever the case is. But that stuff can't last forever. And then tying that back to taxes, it's like I like the idea. I don't know if it's official, but they're saying something about the SNAP benefits ending, and then if you want to reapply, then go for it. I like that idea, having this either like a sunset clause after X amount of years, or reapply. Even veterans have to do that on some kind of cases where it's like, okay, redo it just so we know that it's legitimate, and that makes sense. It's a means test, and so like, why do we have these SNAP benefits or whatever the other benefits that funding is coming from either the state or the federal government to these certain groups or whatever the case is, indefinite, just forever. It can't go on like that forever, especially when they come from I say come from the government. The government is holding some kind of it, while then it comes from the next taxpayer. And then if you want to go have that discussion about, okay, we're having less population, less kids, and then that's going to mean less taxes in the future. So it's wild. It's scary trying to be black-pilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy, you mentioned it with the veterans and having to reapply for benefits. I think that this is just a sign of just the woke policy being in government, where someone like you and I can get out of the military, and it took me over a decade to get all of my disability acknowledged by the VA, right? And I had multiple doctors being like, "Well, this isn't really affecting you. We don't think this is a real claim." And then, and I know hundreds of vets that go through that, probably thousands. I've constantly have friends that I served with reaching out to me as they're getting out now, because, I'm in that age bracket now where all my friends are hitting their 20-year mark that stayed in. And they're like, hey, how do I navigate this just absolute maze of a system? And then we have this other system over here, also funded by taxpayer dollars, where there's absolutely no monitoring, there's no oversight, and you just giving these people money, you're not checking where is it going, what are you spending it on. I think we need to start following the money more. And yeah, if it's ending up in the hands of overseas, foreign adversaries, wherever that money trail leads back to, those people need to be cut off and potentially sent back home, because they're clearly more vested in what's going on there than they are in being a citizen of this country. And I agree with what you said, AK, about it's not making it an issue of race, because even though I'm from Peru, if you're from Peru in Minnesota and you're stealing my tax dollars, and you're going to steal my children's tax dollars, I don't want you here either. It's America, then Peru for me. right? Like, I
Yeah,
was
that
born
whole
there,
thing,
it's
and you guys could
recently,
talk more
but
about that, obviously. I mean,
yeah,
same as
absolutely.
me, but you know the thing is like the race and then the country origin, whatever. It's not the case anymore. Criminal activity is criminal activity. Fraud is fraud. That's just kind of how it goes. There's
Yeah.
no hiding behind skin color anymore like
Yeah,
that.
thieves come from every
Yeah,
race and every
Florida is
culture,
a
and
perfect thing.
that's yep.
Cubans and different, demographics in Florida, they're like, no, we got away from that stuff. We want to be a part of America. We want to do the right thing, own businesses, and yeah, just to taking advantage of it should not be the case.
And here's the way that I look at it, right? So in everything that we do in our life, there's always going to be nuance, and then there's going to be likelihoods, right? So demonizing an entire group of people just based off of their lineage is never a just thing to do. However, having scrutiny for groups of people that have a tendency to do a thing is actually very smart. And it actually helps the system work out better. So now that we've identified that there is this rampant fraud that's occurring in Somali communities, maybe, just maybe, we should be a little bit more scrutinizing of people that are applying for benefits that are coming from certain population centers. Now, that doesn't mean discrimination, doesn't mean, oh, we're putting a moratorium on anyone that has this lineage, because again, you open up Pandora's box, but we have to have the conversation. Ultimately, the nuance is you can never just broad brush say all people that have this lineage are bad, evil, whatever. I think that's stupid. But being able to have a conversation and say, well, clearly there is something that is happening that is in this community, and it's because of cultural beliefs and attitudes. Let's be very clear about that. Then we have to be far more scrutinizing. And I think that President Trump making that move about ending temporary protected status is a good first step. I think that President Trump talking about having basically everyone removed from SNAP and reapplying to get rid of a lot of the fraud is an important step. And it doesn't matter if the implication is, oh, it's going to affect this group of people and therefore it's racist. We're done with that. Like you said, Drew, like the entire idea that something is racist because statistically there's a higher likelihood that X group or X race is negatively impacted. We don't care. If you happen to fall into that group, that sucks or whatever, but we're trying to stop this fraud. And to that point, I kind of want to move on to another story that recently broke. And it's right in all of this, right? When the shutdown happened, obviously the SNAP benefits ending was like this catastrophic thing that Democrats tried to spin around and say is Republicans' fault. Republicans like, what are you talking about? We've voted 14 times to reopen the government, which would fund SNAP. But there's a new report that in Minnesota, lack of security reviews and audits left Minnesota SNAP system vulnerable to breaches and fraud. And here's the thing, this is exactly what we're talking about. If the system is not even being audited, of course it's going to be rife with fraud, which then brings me to a question I want to ask each of you. Do you think that this is just Democrats suck at managing systems, or do you think this is intentional? Do you think that they've designed a system that allows for rampant fraud to happen and that they're getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar, that they weren't even doing the most basic thing of doing an audit? I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are.
I mean, all these things start off with the best intentions and, be like, oh, yeah, we this great idea. And then over time, it just decays and decays and decays, and it's got to be maintained. So, I mean, kind of a little bit of both. But the thing is, yeah, if you just let a program, was it Reagan that said the most permanent thing is a temporary government program? Is just it'll just go on, and then it'll get so bad, the fraud will just happen. And so, yeah, your question, AK, is just they've moved on to something else. Be like, yeah, hey, we got our voters, our constituents, the program, the money that they want, and now we're going to move on to something else and get the money somewhere else, or whatever the case is, fighting with Republicans or whatever the deal is. But yeah, they're not going to monitor this thing with SNAP benefits or whatever the deal is. At least I haven't seen anything over time. And yeah, I think my parents, we were on it once. I think when my dad and my mom, I was in grade school, they both got laid off at the same time. And I think I had tickets, I guess, at school for a couple weeks. And so I was the poor kid that got comped lunch for a couple weeks. And that was my experience with SNAP benefits, or if that was even part of it. But yeah, it was wild. And it's it's meant to be a temporary thing, not a generational pass on. Here's my EBT card, and all this stuff. So it's got to be reformed.
Yeah, I
What
would
do you
agree
think,
with
Dad?
that. Yeah, so I agree with what Drew was saying, and I look at it maybe from like a more of a like carrot versus stick kind of approach, which is you have to look at the incentive programs here, right? Like there's an incentive to be dishonest with these systems. Whereas if you start cutting off people's protected statuses, you start cutting off people's SNAP benefits because they're, fraudulently spending the money on things that they shouldn't be spending the money on. Now all of a sudden, like I think even like e-cig shops were taking SNAP money. You could go buy vapes and cigarettes and your weed rolling paper with SNAP benefits. I've heard that. I can't confirm that, but I've seen enough things on like TikTok and Instagram to make me believe that it's probably true. But I just look at that and it's like the incentives are there for these people for people to do things that are dishonest with the system. And if you don't change the incentives, like, oh hey, if you're stealing this money or if you're sending it overseas or if you're, using it for things not intended for a family that's struggling to feed their children, we're going to cut off these systems. Well, now you've changed the incentive, and that's how you change behavior. As far as the government goes, I mean, I could see it being a little bit of both. I think it's possible for two things to be true at the same time. I think Elon Musk did a really good job of exposing how the Democratic Party wanted to get rid of the swing states by bringing in all these illegals. And part of how you do that is you just give them unlimited access to funds and stuff, and you've bought their vote, you've bought their loyalty, right? And I think that I would say that there's a certain level of incompetence that probably came into things being what they are now. And I think there was also a certain level of, if we keep giving these people money, they're always going to vote blue and we'll control this district, this area, and that'll allow us to control other money for other programs that fund things we actually care about, even though we don't necessarily care about these people, which I think is the real harsh reality that nobody's really talking about, is that they don't actually care about the poor or the people that are struggling. They care about buying their vote so that they can stay in power in the areas where they're already in power.
Yeah, so like for me, right? The reason why I ask you guys what your position is on it, I just at this point, there's just no way that incompetence can truly account for all of the fraud that's occurring. And then when you see a story like this, right? I mean, according to the story, there's about 440,000 Minnesotans that are on the SNAP benefit program, and a lot of the stuff you can actually look. The USDA publishes all this data, and when you hear that they're missing audits, which part of that determination of those audits are whether or not people are fraudulently receiving benefits. And the state in 2020 is like, oh, I guess we didn't do it. And then in 2023, like, oh, I guess we didn't do it. I mean, those types of things to me aren't just pure incompetence. So here's what my theory is, my tin foil hat theory. I think it's intentional. And I'm not saying that it's like a global cabal or Minnesota cabal. They get together and they're like, we're going to make sure that the money gets stolen. No, they're like, all right, here's the deal. We know that there's a certain rate of fraud that's going to occur. And so if we don't tighten the screws, we know that there is going to be people that abuse it, but good, because this is how we can help redistribute wealth. And when people are living high on the government dollar, which is the taxpayer dollar, then they're going to be more likely to vote for Democrats. And that's what I think is actually going on. I think that it's because of Democrats, again, not just like in all together at once, but just saying, yeah, we know that this is going to occur. And we would rather err on the side of maybe some people receive benefits that shouldn't than people that should receive benefits don't. And you want to know what's crazy about that entire theory? I would argue that veterans through the VA and through different programs that veterans qualify for, that's actually the position the government takes, is that there are people that should qualify, but because they want to, for better or for worse, be so rigid with how they give out these benefits, there are certain veterans that don't get the benefit. So they actually don't get the benefit of the doubt versus the general civilian population gets the benefit of the doubt. And I actually think it should be flipped, okay? I think that if you serve this country, we should give you the benefit of the doubt.
And I hear that a lot too. Like,
yeah,
I hear that.
But we don't for civilians.
I completely
for civilians,
agree.
we give civilians the benefit of the doubt that did nothing. And I'm not saying that every civilian all the time does nothing, but I'm just saying the bar, I would rather give veterans
it's
the benefit
a civic
of the doubt.
service, and it could be in some kind of way. And I hear that more and more from people, like, wealthy, not wealthy. It's like, yeah, we support our veterans. You know, taxes should be going towards that. Everything we put them through. And I always grew up like, or when I was serving, that was like, it's just my job. It's just what I care about, what I do. I don't understand all that. But after getting out, retiring, getting really jacked up, and be like, and then seeing, you know, the civilian population of the, you know, just going to their office and getting their Caribou or Starbucks and, you know, taking their 2 hour break, you know, all this stuff. I'm like, wow, it really is a, you know, a difference between, you know, all those drill weekends and deployments and Fort Hood for a couple months and, you know, all this kind of stuff. It is like a different world. So, and I'm not saying I want every public, you know, every program to be dedicated to that, for sure. But it's just like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You know, there is something that goes for earning it. You know, the whole DEI didn't earn it. It's like, what are we actually contributing to our community, to our state, to our federal government, defense, all this stuff? And then, yeah, when you get, you know, make those sacrifices, having something that comes around makes more sense than, hey, I'm just here because whatever. So give me all the stuff forever. So yeah, it's just, it always comes back to taxes and following the money.
And I just wanted to
100%.
I wanted to kind of throw one last little bow on this topic, and then we can move on. Drew, I know that you had a topic that is pretty important, I think, in the general idea of what this country is going towards and what our future is going to be. But my little bow is that I think it's important for people to understand that the SNAP benefits do get abused. I know that there's some tricks that go on. So a lot of people don't realize that EBT is the actual program. And then in that hierarchy, electronic benefits transfer, whatever the T stands for, you have like SNAP benefits, and then there's cash assistance programs, right? So that same card gives you access to multiple benefits. And so what ends up happening is that certain retailers will basically put in their SKU system things that you can use cash benefits to buy, such as papers or weed and stuff like that, which is crazy that cash benefits can buy these things, but they can, because they literally treat it as cash. But you would think they would X out the, like, you can't buy it at smoke shops, but neither here nor there. So that sometimes gets lumped in that someone's like, oh, that person used their EBT card and SNAP benefits to buy whatever, like weed or whatever. And that's actually not true, or fast food. But again, you can use cash benefits. And then here's the other little piece. People sell their SNAP benefits usually at a rate of 2-to-1. So if you've got $50 cash, I will give you my EBT card and my PIN. You go into the grocery store, you buy your stuff, use the PIN, come back out to the store, right? And there you go. But I take the $50 first. That is very common knowledge. And I've actually seen it happen many times when I used to do Instacart, right? And there would be people outside asking, hey, man, hey, you want to trade benefits? Because like in your mind, right, you get $50 cash, but you're getting $100 in groceries, right? And that's the rate. But yeah, I think it should all shut down, and that's my little piece. My last thing is we
100% agree with that.
need to cut these programs, and we need to make sure that this is only going to people that need it, man.
Veterans
Yeah.
come first. But Drew, you have a topic for us. Speaking of the military and veterans, and the Department of War, why don't you jump in and tell us what's going on your neck of the woods of the story you've got for us?
Sure. Yeah, I saw UCMJ was trending. So we got the Department of War. If you don't know, it was called the Department of Defense. It's now called the Department of War, which I think is awesome. It actually was originally the Department of War, and at some point got switched over to Defense, but makes a lot more sense. The Department of War has received serious allegations of misconduct against Captain Mark Kelly, USN, retired, in accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, and other applicable regulations. Through a review of these allegations has been initiated to determine further actions, which may include recall to active duty for a court martial. So that's a big deal. He's retired now, but bringing him back to, hey, let's go over, because you can't just call, you can't just, he's got to be part of the military to go under this, which has been done before, recalling to active duty so you can actually go through some serious events. So, which may include recall, proceedings, or administrative measures. This matter will be handled in compliance with the military law, which if you didn't know, military has their own law. It's different from civil and criminal. You can be charged in both, but if you are part of the military, they like to handle that in-house. So, going a little bit farther down here, Department of War reminds all individuals that the military retirees remain subject. Here's what I just kind of said: UCMJ for applicable offenses. Federal laws such as this 18 prohibit intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of the armed forces. Any violations will be addressed through the appropriate channels. And this just kind of goes, if you broke the law due to a bad order, we want to know kind of how this went down. And the last 5 years, last four, the last administration, there was a lot that went down that wasn't kind of up to par, which many people believe, especially related to COVID, related to different mandates or different kind of things. So I don't know. We don't know exactly what Captain Mark Kelly is going to be have charged with. I want to say the right words, but we'll see what happens. So this is a trending topic. It just came up recently, but yeah, it looks like there's going to be some good accountability when it comes to a lot of the things that generals, captains, a lot that went down in the last couple of years. Do you guys have any insight on this, David?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, being I just love history. I'm one of those people. I just wanted to jump in real quick and say that we did have a Department of War back. It was first founded August 7th of 1789, and it operated for about 158 years until they changed it to the DoD, which is unfortunate and not a very good name. But so Trump was absolutely right to bring it back to what it was. Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm sure you saw it from your time in the military. There was a lot of things there were a lot of rules that existed that weren't enforced. And I think we're getting back to a military where we're enforcing, those rules or obeying orders or, making sure that the orders you're obeying are lawful and correct. And I think this is a good thing. This is a good turning point because even, I've been out for, gosh, what is it now? 13, 14 years, but even back when I was in, I saw things where I was like, this person I know is breaking rules or breaking the uniform code of military justice, but because of who they are, nothing's going to happen here. And I think we need to, yeah, I think this is a good thing. I think this is, if like I said before, it comes down to incentives, right? If now the incentive is, hey, if you do misconduct, you're going to get, some sort of penalty or some sort of jail time or some sort of charges. It's going to change the actions and the attitudes of other people towards doing things like this
Yeah.
while they're in uniform.
And it's based on agendas and kind of what's popular, what's political. And so if it could be something like forcing all service members to undergo a medical procedure, an experimental medical procedure, be like, hey, don't think this is correct, or saying you can't go to your captain's career course or your advanced leadership course or get deployed or be deployable or be flagged for this or that, or can't go on a 4-day pass unless you get it. Be like, hey, this kind of doesn't sound correct. Can I get some kind of backing for this? And it was a lot of these, especially related to the thing I'm talking about, these commanders, whatever size, company commander, battalion commander, saying, hey, X percentage of your command needs to be green when it comes to, whatever it is, a sharp presentation, which is a sexual harassment type thing. That's kind of a normal thing. I want to make sure people are trained on certain stuff. But when it comes to like undergoing a experimental medical procedure, that's when it might draw the line. Unconstitutional, bad orders, things that can put and then it puts the service member could put the service member at harm, but it also puts the unit at harm. And then you have it cascades up where you have a bad military that's not deployable and ready to defend the country. And so we'll see what this one is about, but hopefully there's some more to come with a lot of issues that I've been hearing about.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
here's
I hope this opens a lot of doors for more investigations.
Yeah.
going
So
into
so
like that.
here's what I was gonna say. Like, let's just make sure that we're setting the correct tone for where this even comes from. There were 6 members of Congress, 2 of them who were former CIA or intelligence officers, and the other 4 who were a smattering of Navy, Army, and I believe maybe Air Force. But these 6 members of Congress made a video in which they said, just like generically, is what they're alleging, that they said, hey, if President Trump issues unconstitutional orders, you actually have a constitutional, you swore a constitutional oath, and you are required to not obey unconstitutional orders. So like they made this video, and people that watch are like, wait, are they saying that Trump is issuing unconstitutional orders? And if they are, prove it. Or are they saying that, just a reminder, PSA, if Trump issues unconstitutional orders, you are duty bound to not follow them? So from that, most people assumed that they were saying that President Trump right now was issuing unconstitutional orders. Now, President Trump in the administration was like, no, we haven't. So if you don't follow our current lawful orders, which President Trump has made of sending troops to protect certain federal assets, he's not violating Posse Comitatus or anything like that, which, again, Democrats are alleging. Deploying troops, activating troops to go and protect federal assets around immigration enforcement, again, is constitutional, but Democrats are saying it's not. So basically what the president is saying and what the White House and now the Department of War is saying is that you have an obligation, and under USMJ, right, you disobey lawful orders, you can actually face consequences, even if you're retired, such as Senator Kelly. You can be basically, what's the terminology, Drew? You could be activated.
Sedition? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Recalled.
And then you could face a court martial, and sure, you could even elevate that to the level of sedition. Because here's the deal, and this is the framing. If President Trump right now has made unlawful orders, the current people that are in the armed forces don't have to follow it. But they're playing this like little, oh, well, we didn't say that he's made unconstitutional orders in the same sentence. But if you actually go and look through each of these Democrats, they have said things like, this is unconstitutional. So to me, and I'm curious from your 2 perspective, do you think that those 6 making that video, do you think it met the line of sedition? And if so, are you concerned that we might have a bunch of people in the armed forces that decide to go rogue and say, well, I'm putting 2 pieces together and saying that President Trump telling me to go and protect these federal buildings is unconstitutional, so I refuse, or I refuse to go and protect these federal buildings while ICE is doing immigration, sweeps and raids. I'm just curious, are you guys afraid of that happening from your military service?
It did sound like that was the message. That's what it sounded like, but I would guarantee it went through so many different, PR media to make sure that what they actually said was scrubbed. But that doesn't change the way that some people can interpret that, and that's what a lot of us heard and be like, all right, this sounds like you're pushing a certain way. But if a lawyer breaks it down, be like, no, they didn't, by their actual transcript, they didn't do anything like that. But then, like you said, when President Trump said, like, well, that sounds like, something bad, and then it causes a reverse effect where now the news media is gonna be like, oh, President Trump is saying to take down these people, and it's like, nope, it was all just kind of like a domino effect, and it's so ridiculous. But that creates a message like, now your random soldiers, service, airmen are gonna be like, oh, maybe we should push back when we get ordered to go to California to, on the border, or federal buildings in Portland or something like that. And it really just creates a bad precedent and plants some really bad seeds.
So here's what I'm curious about, Drew, because you served what? When did you officially get out? Like
2021.
21. So you're 4 years ago, and you experienced, I would argue, a time in American history in which, if there was going to be a large number of members of the armed forces saying like, I refuse to do these things, and like saying we're going to refuse these orders to do these things, but not in the way that you did, right? Which is you use the available channels, but being like, nope, not doing this. Because that didn't happen then, do you think that there's a higher likelihood today that people would, in large numbers, refuse to just say like, nope, we think that this is unconstitutional, so we're not going to do it? Is that a
Yeah.
fear that you have?
Yeah, it does, because it feels like people are getting, and this happens every generation or years, people get softer. They're not paying attention, not listening to orders, and it just seems like that's happening a lot lately in different forms. And you probably get that more with soldiers. I say soldiers, I was in the army, so that's what I refer to. But that's kind of the case where it'd be like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna show up for drill, or I'm gonna go to sick call, or I'm just gonna refuse to participate. I could see that happening more based on what they're hearing on social media, on TikTok, on MSNBC, whatever the case is. Whereas before, it's like, no, I'm gonna do my duty based on what they're saying. And if I got an official complaint, I'll take it up with the inspector general, investigating general, and all the proper way. But now it seems like people are just going to hear what they want. And then, because this kind of happened where we're more social media driven now, like in the last 5 years, than in the previous 20 when I was in. And then it's just a case where I saw so many soldiers where they were a completely different person in uniform. And then you see them on Facebook, lot in this go around the George Floyd kind of stuff where everything was live. And then they're just saying, oh, I'm not going to get out and salute the flag at when it, at the end of the duty day and stuff like that. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to hide in my car. And it's like, what are you doing here? Not maybe they don't want to, and you're promoting it, and then that causes other people to be like, okay, maybe I'm not going to show up to with my orders, and then that decays, like we've been talking about all night. It decays the country, it decays our values, and then we don't have anything worth fighting for anymore.
What about you, David, man? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
are you afraid that this, these actions by these 6 members of Congress, and obviously this is in the context that the statement from the Department of War is kind of like saying, okay, if you continue doing this, we will come down with the hammer. Or do you think that maybe that move by the Department of War was enough to kind of like lower the temperature for people feeling a little froggy? Or are you worried like, yeah, man, this thing could pop off and you could have a bunch of people refusing to follow lawful orders? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm of two minds about this because a lot of the guys I know that are still in, they don't subscribe to that ideology. Like, there's a certain kind of person that typically joins the military, and it's kind of someone that usually more aligns with, and not all the time, but I would say either they lean typically more moderate libertarian or conservative Republican, or MAGA Republican, because it's that operating out of gratitude thing again, right? You're grateful to be here. This is your home, and you didn't listen in public school when they tried to teach you to hate this country, so you want to defend it. Now, are there also people that see, oh, it's a cushy federal job if I can get a job pushing papers on a base somewhere doing payroll or something? Is there some of that? Sure. I think the vast majority of the people that would be boots on the ground for something like this are going to go because they're I would say more aligned with the current administration and their value systems, and they appreciate that, like, he's bringing back national pride and national respect for our military, in a way that obviously wasn't done in the last 4 years. We saw veterans kind of getting forgotten and left behind, and we got a lot of empty promises, or we had people going through Drew's situation where they're being forced to do something that was against their health. Basically the Tuskegee Airmen experiment all over again. One thing I want to point out, and I hope that this video does some rounds on the military bases, is that the same people that just made a video telling you to disobey the commander-in-chief's orders if he sends you to go bring peace to the streets of Chicago or LA, those same 6 people voted to not pay you as a military service member for the last month or and some change. They were okay with the government shutdown, and the people that it would have most impacted was the military, except we had that benevolent, was it billionaire or millionaire? I don't remember exactly.
I think it was going there.
Yeah, who paid the soldiers' salaries through those channels. But those politicians that made a video saying, alleging, I can't say that they said it outright, but left it for very loose interpretation that you could disobey orders. Those are the same people that they didn't want to pay the soldiers to do their job. So it comes down to they don't actually care about the soldiers. They're just trying to win political points and stay in line with their party's ideology. And I think it's important for people like us to have these conversations where we can bring those sorts of topics to light and be like, hey, they might be telling you to do this, but these people don't actually care about you. It's kind of like, it goes back to like everything else we've been talking about all night with the SNAP benefits and these other programs where they don't actually care. They're buying votes, right?
Yeah.
And
And then just
yeah.
the whole thing is that like we're either building up the country, and I probably said this before, or we're destroying it. So
Say it again.
Yeah, we're either building up and we're passing laws and we're working together on something that's either developing the country or it's destroying it. And when I say country, it could be your community, it could be your state, your county, everything that we're a part of, your church. And I just can't wrap my head around a message like that doesn't have any good that comes from it. That just leads more to discourse, destruction, and it long term it doesn't do anything. I always go by my political beliefs are, if you're passing a law or talking about a topic that adds to more humans, I'm usually in favor of it. If you look at a policy that's going to lead to less humans, I'm probably not going to be in favor of it, and that can relate to many different things. And yeah, things like this don't make sense to me. You're causing more fights, and it's not the right thing to do. I don't know how many of these people are leaders and family members and stuff like that. It causes horrible actions that I don't think they thought through, or like you said, AK, is it intentional? Do they know what they're doing?
Yeah,
And
and see, like this
hard
is
to
the
believe
part,
that.
right? This is the part that is, we have to play a guessing game to. I'll say it this way: I don't ever pretend, and I try to, as often as possible, not assume what's in people's hearts, because I think it's kind of a foolish game. Like what do they really feel? But what I will say is I will criticize the actions, and I will say, here's what it seems like is happening. And I think that Democrats are so afraid of losing the power that they have tried to steal and keep over the course of the last 25 years, even potentially longer when we talk about like the deep state having power and unelected bureaucracy having power, right? All of these people that represent these institutions that have been in power for so long that President Trump is dismantling so we can regain our sovereignty as a nation, which is kind of the entire premise of making America great again and America first. It's like we need to divorce ourselves from these things. So within that vein, is it possible that these members using their titles as former members of the armed forces and intelligence community are basically co-signing that, hey, wink, wink, nod, nod, you don't have to obey these things. And if you do decide to disobey, like we're going to have your back in a certain way, shape, or form, which to me, you said earlier, Drew, is this something that's going to lead to more people or less people? If we end up having a further, stepping to the line of whether or not we have some type of insurrection, like a true, real insurrection or civil strife, or even, dare I say it, civil war, where we actually go to kinetic blows because there are people saying that the president is issuing unconstitutional orders and you have a duty to disobey them. And then you have a current military and armed forces that say you're going to be court-martialed, you're going to be thrown in prison. And then you have certain elected officials saying, well, come to our state. And then all of a sudden you have a scenario where people are like, hey, well, these states decided to secede. And it's like you're replaying these things. So the question is, what's their intent? I think that, again, if I were to lay everything, do I think that they want to have a civil war? No. I don't think anyone that is sane wants to have a civil war. But I just think that they're not accounting that this could tear our country apart, that we are becoming so factionalized and so polarized that if you have a percentage of people that say it's okay to disobey the president's lawful orders if you just think they're unconstitutional, is a scary line to cross. And so I don't know, man. My ultimate thing is I think the Department of War making this very strong, full-throated response is a good thing because it's putting people on notice that, hey, we'll recall you. Don't think
Yep.
that you're safe just because you're retired
Agreed.
now. We'll recall you and we'll bring you in front of a court martial, and you will have to stand for
Exactly.
these acts.
No, because like I didn't even think about it like that, but I know the last 4 years of what I've been through. If you know my story, check it out on X, Drew Outstanding. But I could have, screamed to the skies and everything about everything that went down, but I was extremely careful of my words. And I put stuff out, but I'm very careful. And I'm not gonna, disparage certain things because I know what bad things can kind of come from that, and I know my role. I guess I stay in my lane, but I still have values and can tell when something is wrong. And but I would base it on the Constitution or base it on rules and policies. And like I said, a lot of them got switched back. They were requiring that medical procedure for people to get in the military, and they got rid of that, and they were kicking people out, and they're like, nope, we're not going to do that anymore. And like, okay, so obviously you thought about it and knew that that was a bad decision, but and now it's just not popular anymore. But AK, going to what you were talking about with the Civil War, civil strife, it's not going to be as easy as people think it is. Like, for one, if something happened like that, other countries would jump on it and they would pick sides. China, Russia, all the Middle East, all these different countries be like, all right, let's go. America's up for grabs and let's pick sides and influence, just like with American Revolution, France, and, all these things that America's been through. It's been other countries that kind of jump in. It's never just been a us versus us. So, and that would lead to so many destruction, human lives lost. And like you said, if people are pushing for that, then those aren't the right kind of people, because that would just lead to killing, and that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah, and what's funny is like I'll tell a little bit of lore here. Back in 2008, election night, John McCain versus Barack Obama. Obviously Obama won. And I was at the election night victory party for the Republican Party of Minnesota down in Bloomington. And we were distraught, man. Me and a bunch of college Republicans, because we worked so hard that election cycle, man. I mean, McCain came to Minnesota multiple times. And I was actually at Lakeville High School. I got to sit literally on the stage with McCain. Like, he was taking questions, doing a town hall, and there was like 6 or 7 college Republicans, and I got to sit right there and shook his hand and all that stuff. So I was devastated. But my mom called me, and she was like, can you at least be happy that, the first black president was elected? And my mom's white, and obviously she had me, so she knows that I'm black. And she's just like, can't you be a little bit happy because, like, you get some representation? And I was like, no, Mom, I'm actually very, very disappointed, and I'm actually afraid. And she's like, what are you afraid of? And this is, again, election night 2008. I said, Obama is such an ideological radical. He is going to fundamentally reshape this country, and I think it's going to push us towards a civil war. And I made this statement to my mother on election night. Was I pretty emotional? Sure. But I was like, if he pushes as hard as I think he's going to push to fundamentally reshape the way that America does things, I think it will cause us to start heading down that path. And as I've seen it continue to progress, I think that today we are closer than we've ever been to having some type of moment, especially when you see governors in Democrat-controlled states like Illinois say, come and get me. Like, for real. Like, they're saying, like, come and get me, and we are going to defend criminal aliens in our states. Now, do I think that tomorrow everything could change and off-ramp, and maybe Trump meeting with Mamdani could be an off-ramp moment, right? To be like, even though, yes, Mamdani is a communist socialist, but at least we can find a way that we can battle our ideas at the ballot box and not physically in the street. And so I just want to say, like, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I just think that we have to be hyper aware that every move that we do to empower people like these Democrats that are playing these dangerous games, we have to remove them from power by voting them out, or at least calling out and saying the Democrats are going to foment a bad thing. So we have to all stick together. And this is the thing, last piece. The MAGA coalition is a coalition of Democrats, liberals, former Democrats, independents, libertarians, that all banded together. We are the coalition of America. Democrats have become this cult-like thing. And so I just want to say that I think we're on the side that actually represents what most Americans want, you know?
Yeah, AK, yeah, going off what you just said, like about an off ramp, I used to believe, or I wanted to believe before, like there was, be like, okay, we're going to come together, like on 9/11 and stuff like that. We're all united. And you just haven't seen anything like that in the last couple of years, in the last 5 years, 10 years, pretty much since Trump, 2016 and stuff. It just be like people are just at each other's throats, and it's not even based on logic, facts. It's all emotional, and it's hard because online you see all this fighting back and forth, and then it transfers over to community functions and Thanksgiving and stuff like that, and it's usually based on the wrong kind of information. And I used to think that we could have common ground. I used to watch a lot of, in what was this, like 2018, the Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and stuff like that. Charlie Kirk was coming up during that time, and it's like that was inspiring to see be like, let's talk about it, change my mind, go to college campus, go to UC Berkeley and talk about it. And then it just got more and more violent. And then I like to think that it's just online, but then it's in person too. But the whole online thing, and just to kind of switch into a different topic a little bit, is now Twitter is I don't know how to say it correctly, but it's putting on Twitter accounts, on X accounts, the country of origin for accounts. So if you go look at your own or other people, you could see that it's coming from the UK or Canada or America. And what they found is a lot of people have these accounts from India that are pushing politics, American politics, that they're really strong about for whatever reason. I don't know all the details of, like, you hear about these, bot farms and these different things. But so now you can see on everybody's account the country of origin that they're posting from. And so I thought that's just been a really interesting thing, that I like that, Elon is throwing out these creative things and be like, all right, let's look at it. Like, let's look at where the people are coming from. They're really talking anti-MAGA, pro whatever, and they're in their little spot in India or wherever across the world. Like, what's going on with that? What do you think, David?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just checking my Twitter actually, and you're right. It does show country of origin. Well, because last I had heard, hey man,
And
I'm
how
a millennial.
dare you, Drew, dead name Twitter, man. It's X, dog.
You're right. I was on X. I was on X. I I think this is a good thing because, kind of even tying into the previous topic we were having about the divisiveness of this country, and kind of we went off a little bit of a tangent off of the military thing. But, you have all these different influences coming in from the outside trying to get us to infight with each other. Um, and yeah, there's all these accounts that aren't even here in the United States. They're like from India, Thailand, all these other countries, outside of here, that are pouring in, and pouring into the minds of our young people and our service members, right? I mean, you think about, the things that they're posting about, like during like the George Floyd riots and things like that. And what's being promoted to them based on these accounts. And what's interesting, and this is a question that Jeremy from the Quartering actually asked yesterday. I saw him ask this, was, you know, a, a lot of the staff at X that Musk is protecting are people with H-1B visas, right, that are from some of these countries. And that feature got quickly turned off, and I don't know if it later got turned back on because people called them out for it. But it does raise the question, like, what, their invested interest when they come here to work here, and are we checking in on those people that we're letting in under those visas? What's their invested interest in this country? Is it to make sure that whatever they're pushing from their side of the world affects our policies and the way people vote here? And I just think that that level of transparency, I think it's good for us as a nation. I think it makes it a lot easier to be like, I don't care what you think, you're in Bangladesh, you know, and not that you're not. It's not that you're not a human. It's not that you're not a human being with value or a spark of divine whatever purpose, but you're not an American citizen. So you weighing in on American politics or the policies in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I don't care. You're in Bangladesh. Go get involved in Bangladesh politics. You
Yeah,
know,
look at this one real
that's how I
quick.
look at
It
it.
looks like Ivanka Trump, but it's Ivanka
Yep.
or Ivanka News. This account has 1 million followers, and then it's coming from Nigeria.
And it's
Account
as
based.
old as 2010. That's crazy work. I was still in the army when that account was made. That's
Yep.
Yeah,
And
so-
crazy
so
work.
your
Dude,
low
And it's changed its
information.
username 11 times, so you know that it's gone under other conservative.
And
figures.
dude, here's the thing, right? Like, so you know, I'm probably online way too much, but I followed this when it went live, and it was so fascinating to see how many accounts and like pick your ideological side. There's people on the left, people on the right, people that are libertarian, people that are pro-Israel, people that are anti-Israel, right? People that are pro-Palestine, whatever. You just found out that there's just all of these people that are posting that are from other countries, and they're just helping foment, I think, a lot of division for clicks, some of it. And then there's like the entire aspect of like maybe these are deep state actors because, you know, as you pulled up, Drew, right? People can use a VPN, and with that VPN, it will show a location. It could say the United States, but then there's like a little, like basically like a little warning icon. And when you hover over it, it says like, this could be from a VPN, or it could be that they were traveling. So then there's all of these people that are still trying to like pretend that they are in these other countries with these political opinions. And here's where I stand. I don't care if you're from another country and you want to add add your 2 cents to a conversation about the United States, as long as we know that you're from another country and that I can throw your opinion in the trash because you don't live here. I even think, and I go a little extreme with this, if you no longer live in the United States and it's not because you are serving your country or doing something that is like civic minded, like maybe you're a missionary and it's a temporary time, but if you've decided to move over to another country and you're an expat, I don't think you should be able to vote. Like, and I get it, like that's like revoking people's citizenship or whatever. I'm just saying, if you don't actually have to live here with the consequences, I don't really care. And I especially don't care about your opinion. So if you're an expat American that's been living in Bali for the last 20 years, I don't care what your opinion is on what's happening in domestic politics. The moment that you decided to live in another country for a long amount of time, I don't really care. Now I get it. You still have the right to vote and all that stuff. But there are so many people that don't even live in the United States that have such strong opinions about what's happening in the United States. And I don't really care about your opinion. Now, the thing that I love the most about what Elon's done is expose so many people that were faking so we can then completely remove. I hope that that Elon does is that he allows us to mute people based off of the country that they are tweeting from.
Good
'Cause
idea.
Dude, I don't want to hear what people from Bangladesh, India, Mumbai, like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, I don't like Ian Miles Chong because he talks about American politics.
I was
but
just going to bring that up.
But he tells us that he's in wherever he's at, Malaysia or like whatever. Sometimes he pretends like he'll be like our, and it's like our, dog. You're in whatever country you're in, but yeah, man, that's where I'm at, dude.
Matt
I'm
Walsh
so glad
and
to see-
Ian Miles Chong are going at it back and forth. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Ian Miles Chong are.
I
proud.
love
and it's
to
fine.
see
Like,
it.
yeah, you can bring it up, but like when you're only talking about America and one certain side or whatever the case is, and not about your own country, and it has an influence on, I go back to our tax dollars, and our message, and if it's, leading to a better country for us or a worse one, like this isn't a positive thing. And he's probably making a ton of money by doing it, It's just,
dude, and here's what's even crazier, right? Like when you think about unveiling where people are from, like where they're posting. One thing that Elon originally rolled on, I say Elon, but his devs, is that it showed where the country that the account was created in. And that did go away. So to your point, David, it rolled out, it showed the country that it was created in, and then it showed the country that it's posting from. Then they brought it down, brought it back up, and now it doesn't show the country that it's created in publicly. But I think it does show if you go and actually look at your own account or whatever. And I just, listen, man, this is important because as we were just talking about, the possibility of having some type of, insurrection or civil unrest, you're right, Drew. When you look through history, it's never just going to be our country it's involved. It's going to be other countries that are just chomping at the bit in their mouth. They're salivating like, oh, I can't wait to take my piece.
yep, either with
carve up-
money or
Yeah,
with
dude.
weapons or with personnel, you know?
Right. And so they could be fomenting, and it turns out some of them have been. And that's what this new update unveiled, is all of these people from other countries that have been fomenting discord and disunity in the United States. And I think that's why this is such a huge point. Hey, I want to share something, so I'm going to try. We'll see how well I can do this. I'm going to
We
share.
believe in you, AK.
Well, yeah,
My-
just going off that, and feel free to
Yeah.
interrupt me. But yeah, it's wild because then it goes back to, you know, what's the message that's coming across at the dinner table? And it's like, are we caring about this big, you know, back and forth with you know, politics, fighting back and forth, or we can't afford our groceries? You know, a truck now is well, it's between 50,000 and I've seen some for $100,000 for a truck now. And like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to have a small business and I can't get a truck for a decent amount of money, probably because of all these things that are going on that has an influence on our economy and making everything more expensive. It sucks learning the stuff. It's good to know the information, but man, it's tough to really understand it.
No, you're right. And there is one thing that, you know, a downside to Elon making this public is that my secret's now out, guys. And I'm sorry to break it to you guys this way, but
yeah, there's been a lot of memes I've been seeing.
my account is based in your mom's house. She's been very kind to me. I know that
You
things
are
been weird with
so childish.
Very nice.
you and your fathers, but call me daddy now. Call me. It's okay.
Unbelievable.
Come to
You are so childish.
No, I will
love
say
it.
it's good. I'd rather know the information because it's like
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
better to know the information. Like if you're fighting back and forth with somebody, which I got a lot. I came on X when it was Twitter when Elon bought it, and just, you know, sharing my story, and I got a lot of support. But then I also got people trolling after me like crazy. And then I was spending hours, I'm sure you guys have, in the chat and on the panel of just fighting. And then I look down and it's like 4 hours later. And then I'm like, I'm probably just arguing with a robot or a farm account or something like that. And it's like, they got me, you know what I mean? Over nothing. I'm never going to see this person. But yeah, so I'd like to know that these are fake accounts
Yeah, and it goes back to our larger conversation
or
about,
agenda
like,
accounts.
it goes back to our much larger conversation about you know, like the potential of us ending up in a civil war, right? Is you have, you know, it's no different than, you know, back in ancient times when you'd send infiltrators into a city and get the citizens all riled up against each other or against the ruling class, so they'd throw open the gates and let you in, right? And even if it's not and some of it could be things from a foreign state, you know, that maybe that's their objective, or maybe even not so much to invade us, but just to keep us weak enough that we can't interfere with whatever they're trying to do. It could be that. It could be, you know, your scammers and your people that are making money off of the grift, right? You had all those TikTok accounts that were selling Charlie Kirk T-shirts right after his assassination within hours, and they were all based out of India. And I was telling people like, hey, like I ordered my Freedom T-shirts from TP USA. It took me a little while to get them, but I was like, I felt much better about doing that because I know that money's going to his family and his business, and it's continuing that mission and that legacy versus giving the money to some random person in Bangkok that I'll never meet and that doesn't care about the policies in this country. They just want to make some money off of the grift. And I'm not saying that's all of them, but I'm saying that, you know, that's a lot of that is coming from overseas influence, and it benefits us as a people to know that, so that we can ignore that, we can cast it aside, and we can say this isn't relevant to the conversation because it's coming from someone that has no vested interest in the outcome. Or their
And then you
vested
are
interest
checking yourself
is
to make
against
sure.
is against our benefit, actually.
Yeah.
In some
Well,
cases.
and then you're reinforcing your values and the things that you're believing, and you're checking back. Be like, yep, I do know what I believe in because I'm fighting with somebody who's not even a real person. And so I like, come at me if I got something wrong with my point, my argument, tell me about it. But if it's just like I said, a robot or somebody just trying to get money or push a different agenda just because, then, you know, that's not a real argument back and forth. It should go on the substance, on the real points of it. And when we lose that, like I said, I keep going down this, we don't have a country, a community anymore when we're just being influenced like that. So another win for the Elon. I'm not saying he's right on everything, But yeah, show us, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I like this action.
No, man, it's been
Absolutely.
good. And ultimately, I think just it's funny. This is one of my toxic traits. And I don't have that many, but I have a couple. And one of my toxic traits is
Only a
when
couple.
when I argue with people, I come to a realization that they're either a child, like it's literally like a 14, 15-year-old, because their logic is just so broken. And when I call them out, every single time I've done it, and this has probably happened like 8 times in the last 2 years, they're like, yeah, so what? I'm like, oh my, I've been arguing with a child and you're pretending to be an adult. Like, oh my gosh. But it's like, so that's one thing. I argue so much. And then I also like to mess with scammers. So literally this just happened last week. Someone sent me a DM, right? It went into like the people you may know, but like whatever. And it's like clearly someone that's one of two things. It's either some dude from Nigeria or Bangladesh that is basically using someone else's picture, or it's like a bot, AI account, chat bot that's just trying to get you to go to their OnlyFans page. And I called it early, but what I like to do, and this is my toxic trait, is I will communicate with these people sometimes for days, if not weeks, to waste their time. Yes, it's wasting my time too, but I feel like it's a service because then they can't really harass someone else. And so I was talking with this person that I didn't know who they were, and I was like, "You're an online prostitute, aren't you?" Like after, like I finally got bored, and I was like, "Oh, that's great! Like you're such an amazing person and all this different stuff." And then they were like trying to send me to like literally their OnlyFans. I'm like, "You're a prostitute." They're like, "I'm not a prostitute." I'm like, "You literally are a prostitute," and it was really funny. But here's the thing, Elon making these steps so we know we're having conversations with the people that we want to, and those that are scamming and grifting. There's always going to be a certain level, but the more that we can just know that we're having authentic conversations with people who say that who they are, that's all I want, man. Like I don't care if you're ugly or you're hot or whatever. If you have good ideas and you can be entertaining, that's who I want to interact with. Make that easier instead of interacting with children and bots and people from foreign countries that have no actual skin in the game.
I
Good
100%
point.
agree with
Yeah,
that.
the skin in the
Yeah,
game,
absolutely.
the taxes. Yeah, it's like, why are you arguing about this? Like, I wouldn't argue. Like, I never really argued about the men and women's sports kind of thing. I,
Sure.
I I try to talk about it, like, of what makes sense to me. But it's like, ladies, like, do you really want this? And there was a lot of women that are like, yeah, yeah, equality. We should be nice to each other. Be like, do you know that what this is going to do to your scholarships, and then that got them thinking, So yeah, we need that open discourse, learning from each other, testing our own beliefs, making sure that we're in the right, and we're not always in the right, and then we learn more and adjust fire.
100%. Yeah, this is a great circle. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we move on to another topic? Because we're going to
Uh,
switch gears and talk about two things that are a little more fun.
yeah, no, you take it away, brother. I know that you got some cool stuff you want to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump into the first one because this is going to be kind of short. But over not this weekend, the previous weekend, I got to go and participate in the Hmong Committee of 100's 50-year gala they hosted over in St. Paul. Incredible event, incredible night. We went there as guests of Cha Vang. He's the guy in the picture there in the red tie.
Nice.
And this gentleman is one of General Vang Pao's sons, and I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Hmong community and their culture, but he's basically like their George Washington, their Martin Luther King. Like he brought them, he not only led them in the fight against the communists, in Vietnam, but then he also led them in their refugee statuses and fought for them to get programs and access here in this country to make them a very successful people. And like we were talking about before with assimilation and stuff and the value of that, I always say immigration without assimilation is invasion. And what I love and respect so much about this community, the more I've gotten to be involved with them with the Frederick Douglass Project, which is an organization that I'm a nonprofit that I'm a part of, is they assimilated. They're very much their culture, but they're also very much Americans, and they're grateful to be here. right? And they love this country. They show such honor and respect to military members, to politicians, regardless of the side of the aisle they're on, whether they agree with them or not. If you walk into that space, you're going to get treated, or if you're even just an organization showing up to support, whatever they're putting on, they're going to treat you with so much respect and gratitude that you're there. And I would just love to bring that mentality into like the Hispanic community, that I'm essentially a part of, kind of. I'm relearning my heritage. I'm getting there. I'm learning some Spanish, but yeah, that it was an incredible event, and just hearing the stories and just they're celebrating 50 years of resettlement here in the United States, and they went from being refugees of people without a home to you've got doctors, lawyers, politicians, engineers, software developers, just incredible across the board. And I just wanted to share that with you guys that I got to go to that, and actually, this is a great get for our show. I've been talking to Cha Vang about coming on as a guest, so that may be coming up here in the next week or so, maybe before we go out down to Phoenix next month for oh my God, why am I blanking on what that event is called?
America Fest.
Amfest. There we go, Amfest.
But it technically stands for America Fest, but everyone
America
shorthands
Fest,
it
absolutely.
Amfest.
But yeah,
America
guys,
Festival.
weigh in.
Yeah.
The Hmong community, 50 years of resettlement here in the United States. Just the way their approach to even just interacting with us as citizens and in our communities and stuff.
Yeah.
You don't hear about the crime rate with them the way you do with just, I feel like they've mastered what it is to be a refugee, a successful immigrant, and an American citizen. It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's true. Like that's proof that it can happen, and there's no reason that it can't with any group, any populace, any race, religion. We are all different, but like I said, we can work together and boost each other up without taking each other down. Like, you don't need to stand on somebody to get higher up, and that's why, a lot of the topics we talked about tonight, it seems like that's the way some people go about it. But no, the Minnesota National Guard has a lot of Hmong population. I worked with them, amazing people. Some of them, like, they brought in food and stuff like that to like drill and everything like that. And he's like, here, and it was for like.
Did you
leaders.
fail weight and tape?
No,
Hmong food
but it
is
was
so good.
It was really good.
I'd have gotten fat if they'd have brought.
Well,
it
that's
to
what
my
it
area.
was. It was local business owners
Yes.
that brought it in. They're like, hey, this is our heritage. We're local business owners. We pay taxes. We contract out to community members, and it's like it all works. And now we're giving you our food, so you can know what it's like, and you probably have Hmong soldiers in your commands, in your sections, so you can talk about something that you both have in common now. And so I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. It was like, yep, bridge the gap, not take from each other.
Yeah, I think what's probably the coolest part of what you were able to do, David, is like, listen, man, people are people. And I think that, there's a way that we can try as individuals to try and have influence, or the groups that we join have influence with other groups of people, to try and get them to see the value of what America truly has to offer. Because I think that as we've become polarized, certain narratives will kind of take hold. And one narrative that is very persistent when you go and talk to an average person is that Republicans are xenophobic and they don't like people that have different cultural practices or whatever. And that's never been the case. It's actually always been the case that most Republicans respect people that want to come and add to us, to make us better. What we've never respected, and people that ascribe and subscribe to the Republican philosophies, are people that want to tear down what makes us us. So it's like, you can live in this world, and I've met plenty of people from both the Hmong community and from the Somali community. I've met people from Bosnian community. I've met people from West Africa. My dad was from Sierra Leone, and Liberians. They have a large population imprint here in Minnesota as well. It's like, you come to this country because we are able to offer you something that you were not getting in your home country. So I get this. There's going to be certain traditional practices or observations that you want to keep that reminds you of where you came from. But you also have to understand that you have now come to the United States, and that we have cultural things that you must assimilate to. And if you can't, it's always going to cause all types of problems. And so I think it's great, David, to be able to find these areas that we can say, like, listen, we want to be able to raise our kids. We want to be valuable members of our community. We want to be able to help each other, and that we don't need you to remain siloed in your little neighborhoods where everything is like, in lack of a better term, if you only speak another language and you're not speaking the language that most Americans speak, which is English, then I think you're missing out on something. And so I think that, again, all of these actions as individuals that we take can make that thing stronger, to the point that this last weekend I was handing out turkeys with my Lions Club. I'm a member of the Lions in Hugo, even though I live in Forest Lake. But we were handing out turkeys and handing out meals through the food shelf to people in our community. And these are things that I think we get away from as people, that we don't take responsibility for our larger community. And it is up to us as individuals to do these things. So seeing you do that, David, I'm sure you as well, Drew, have done so many things, especially in the veteran community. But it's like going out and just serving our fellow Americans, man. And I think something has been lost in our society, where especially Democrats, they're like, well, I pay my taxes and the government takes care of things, so I don't need to make that personal sacrifice. Whereas on the right, we're like, no, who cares? Like, I don't care about my taxes. I want to pay less, but I'm going to go and volunteer my time, my energy, my money into helping my community.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, if you tax me less, I'll actually do more for my community, because
that's
that
the way
drive
it
within
used to
me.
be, or the
Yep.
way I've known it. And they've done studies on it. The less you get taxed, the more you have to give out to organizations, people, and you can be more charitable, especially when you're the one handing the money, handing the turkey, inviting somebody over, knowing your neighbors. It's like, yeah, my neighborhood, I got all different kinds of people in my neighborhood, and we know who each other are. We help each other out. And yeah, it doesn't feel like that with the online presence of just at each other's throats, like I've been saying. And yeah, great job, David. I was actually at a gala this past Friday. It was a veteran organization, and they're really doing awesome things. I don't want to have all the information in front of me, so I don't want to say the wrong thing, but they're trying to be a supplemental to the VA. So they're not trying to replace the VA. They're trying to find out the gaps of where the VA may be failing, and then creating services with licensed professionals, credentialed people that can help veterans in that. And it was cool. It was a dining. I'm going to mix it up. Dining out. So in the military, we'd have dining ins, and they'd get crazy and stuff like that, especially before social media and everything. And so this was one that you invited military members, veterans, and members of community to kind of see what a military function looked like. And it was a lot of fun. The grog and the different traditions and stuff like that. So we had a great time, and it's really going to help out the veteran community in a way that
That's
we're
incredible.
not all getting
We should
supported.
we should try to get somebody from that organization to come on and just chat with us a little bit, talk to us
Yep.
about that organization, so we get more word out on that. Absolutely. So we're going to transition from that real quick, though. I know we're kind of down to the wire here with time, but AK has a fantastic, fun topic for us, somewhat, I think, depending on how deep down the sci-fi rabbit hole we go. AK, take it away. What's this other topic you have here about teleportation?
So listen here, man. I love science. Okay, like I'm just like, I'm a science dude. I love science, future science especially, right? And so these stories I think are important to be aware of, because sometimes people are like, oh, who cares? Like space travel, alternative energy and all this, whatever. So this story caught my eye. So world's first quantum teleportation achieved between photons, scientists confirm. Here's why this is huge, okay? We're not at the point where we're going to be like, again, teleporting, actual matter through space or whatever. But the breakthrough experiment was led by a team from University of Stuttgart in Germany, brings quantum internet a step closer, with physicists teleporting a quantum state between photons produced by separate light sources for the first time. So basically, the way that the quantum, if you want to say, field operates versus our general physics field, is that there's all of these little subatomic particles that behave in weird ways that our normal understanding of physics can't explain. And so it kind of quantifies it down to what they call the quantum mechanics controls the operation of how physics work. And so using what we know to be true about quantum physics is that you have this thing in which you can create two, if you want to say, points in time and in space that are entangled, 2 points. They call it quantum entanglement. And so we know and we observe that this is true, that these two, we'll call it again, quantum pieces of material can exist, and they are entangled no matter how far apart they are. One could be right here in my living room. The other one could be on Alpha Centauri. And these two pieces relay information instantaneously. So we know that this is true. So what scientists have figured out is if we can create basically two quantum photons that are tied together, and we can relay information. Can we actually turn that into something like the internet? So the way that the internet works, right now, is you can transmit information, and it's basically a digital copy, and it can go, whether we're talking about information that bounces off of cell phone towers, satellites, fiber optics, right, can give you faster and faster speeds. Well, what if you could do it instantaneously? Okay, like now. And that's literally what they were able to produce, is that they can have these two photons that are quantumly entangled that can be, at this point, I think they were able to get like 130 kilometers apart, that instantly transmits the data. Like, it's crazy, like instantaneous. And so they were able to actually make it happen. So the reason they call it teleportation is because there's no other way to describe how the information gets from photon 1 to photon 2 that are quantumly entangled, other than it basically teleports it. And so there's all these other kind of mathematic parts that I am not a physicist, but the thing that matters most is that this is a step forward to literally being able to teleport information instantaneously from here to the moon, and the implications of us having a better grasp where we can actually create quantumly entangled particles is that we can then start to expand it to do greater and greater things, such as the thing that's most interesting to me, which would be like actual human teleportation, using the idea that things are quantumly entangled and being able to unlock that. So here's what I'm curious about from either one of you. One, do you even care? And two, are you at all interested in being able to, pick up a phone and talk to someone on Mars instantly instead of having to wait, for long amounts of time?
I've been hearing a quote lately where it's like, I love that for you. So
Yeah, I feel that true. Listen,
especially, 4 minutes to the end of the hour. This is something I'd love to talk at, like, behind a paywall or something where you could really
Agreed.
dissect. But yeah, I think I'm at my bandwidth.
I will answer with a very short, with a little anecdote. Little 10-year-old David snuck downstairs to watch whatever movie my parents were watching after they'd sent us to bed, and they were watching this movie called The Fly. And I'll just let that be my answer for how I feel about teleportation.
You're afraid you're going to get teleported with a fly and turned into a fly?
I'm just saying, things could go wrong before they go right.
Interstellar
And so we should
came to my
proceed with
mind.
caution.
Interstellar,
Yeah, exactly.
that's a
Yep.
dope
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, like
Dude,
I'm
we
just,
we do a whole episode. I could do a Sunday show with you, and we could break down.
We
this
should
kind of
do
stuff.
we should do
Yeah.
one for news and one for just sci-fi and pop culture. That would be
All
great.
right. Hey,
But
if I
we're
could
getting
just
to the
bring
end
up
of
a
the
few
show.
things.
Let's
Yeah.
everybody kind of let people know where they can find you guys.
Yeah. Oh, well, real quick, I just want to talk about X right now. So, Culture
yeah, absolutely.
Warrior Unchained. We got 3 followers, and this might be the 3 of us. So, if we can get some more followers on X, Culture Warriors Unchained, and then our YouTube, I think it'll along the same lines at Culture Warriors Unchained. Our first episode has 145 views, our second 29, and I think there's 1 watching right now. So, who's ever watching, thank you. And but no, we
Drop a
have
comment next
15
time.
15 subscribers right now. So I want to just kind of bring that up as we do these shows and kind of see where our audience goes, and we can make this into something awesome. And I'll just close on, find me on X at Drew Outstanding and Operation Outstanding in Field on YouTube. Thank you.
And I'll
David?
go next. So, David, you can close us out. But you can follow me on X at Real AK Kamara, along with Facebook and Instagram, same at Real AK Kamara. You can also go to akkamara.com, my website, which is going to go through some changes. My younger brother's helping me change some things. And then you can also follow me on TikTok at just AK Kamara, because Real AK Kamara wasn't available there. And on the other platforms, AK Kamara wasn't available, so I had to split the difference between those two. But make sure that you guys share this show if you guys like it. Please leave comments of things that you like, things that you don't like. We are a brand new podcast. I think that it's kind of an interesting format where we're going to always have a guest. We're going to try to as much as possible, and we're going to talk about what's happening in the news, things that each one of us like. Obviously, you can tell that each of us have our own passions about things that matter to us. And ultimately, we hope to be able to further the discourse here in Minnesota. Because, like, at the end of the day, yes, we want to talk about national stories, but we want to fill a void that currently exists in Minnesota. And that is something to push back against the mainstream legacy media narrative. Alpha News, amazing news organization. They do a lot of great work. Shout out to everyone over at Alpha News. Shout out to Liz Collin. You guys do an amazing job. But we also want to be able to occupy the cultural space as well by having this podcast and talking about these different things. Also, shout out to Center of the American Experiment. They do an amazing job with what they do as well. But that's what we hope. So follow us, like us, share us if you think we're good. If not, then I guess, go fly a kite, buddy.
Very nice.
Take us out,
You can
David.
find me- You can find me at David Webster or Webster50 on X or TikTok. I don't have a reel in front of my name. I should probably do that because there's a lot of David Websters out there. Just look for the guy in the fly suit. That's me. And when I'd love to take your questions. Like we said, like, subscribe. Hit the notifications icon so you know when we're going live. We've been experimenting with different days, so we're gonna keep doing that until we find a format that works for both us and the audience, and maximizes engagement so we can keep these conversations going. But a great show, great guest. It was great to have you guys on here. It was great to cover all these topics, ranging from the ultra serious to the somewhat hilarious. But yeah, it was a great show, and we wish you guys have a great evening. And we'll be at AmFest this December. We'd love to say hi to you while we're down there. We might be doing a live stream while we're down there. We're setting that up.
Cool. See you guys
Have a
later.
good night.
Absolutely.